I'm really excited to introduce you to a new segment that I'm going to do about once a month, which is mean comments. Okay, I hope you liked that little plane there. I tried to make it look like lovely and happy because mean comments are a good thing, guys. One thing that I'm passionate about is starting dialogue in my work, in my political commentary. I want people talking about these issues, and with that are going to come skeptics and people who are really angry. Well, this week, our mean comment award goes to Diego, who posted this. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. And for those of you who are just listening out, let me read for you what he said. He said, long story short, I'm really tired of seeing privileged people make such boring and bland content that is homophobic, misogynistic, and ignorant! Exclamation mark. We don't need another white man giving his opinion on matters that don't involve him. Another exclamation mark. So let me tell you the story of how this happened. So basically, this is in response to a video that I made about Sound of Freedom. I made it simply praising Tim Ballard, the great work that he had done with Operation Underground Railroad. Really short and simple. So it was a longer clip here on YouTube, but over on Instagram, it was, 40 seconds, because that's all Instagram can handle. He then went into my DMs and proceeded to attack Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. So I asked him if he wanted to continue a dialogue with me, potentially come on the show, and he proceeded to post our conversation that was private on his story, which was fine. It was a total, there's nothing I would ever say to anyone that I wouldn't want to be out in the open like that anyway. So this is kind of the final post, the thing I just put up on the screen. And this is the problem. And then this is what I'm going to critique. First off, I love getting those mean comments, so I'm totally fine with it. But it really shows a problem in progressive ideology today that stems ultimately from racism. They are racist, and there's no other way to say it. And I don't like just throwing that word out because that's what people on the left do. But this truly is racism. They view race as a class system where the hue of your skin determines the importance of your opinion. The hue of your skin determines the importance of your opinion. That's easy to see. Anyone could see, left or right, is going to be able to tell. Yeah, they basically completely invalidate you if you happen to have white skin, which really points to me that they have super weak beliefs and they're very insecure about the underlying ideologies that they believe in. Otherwise, why would they attack something that you have no control over? Their ideas really should stand and shouldn't have anything to do with how your skin color looks. There's a belief that if there's not a direct tie to you in an issue, you cannot speak to it. That was one thing he said to me. In one of the comments, Diego said that because me and another guy were talking about abortion, why would we even consider doing that? That has nothing to do with us. First off, I would argue it does because, my children matter to me, and if my children are aborted, they're gonna not exist. So, but the problem with the belief that if there's not a direct tie to you, then you cannot speak to it, is that it's done in hypocrisy. As they're this group does not actually believe that. Because I'll just give you one example, for instance. People on the left are the most atheistic group that mankind has ever known. The new progressive movement that is going on the left is the most atheistic group that has ever existed, and they're constantly trying to regulate religion. One could easily argue, you're not a member of the religion or any religion. What right do you have to regulate religion? That's just one example. The question I leveled at him was, can I not care about black rights? I'm not black. If the black vote was taken away today, for instance, would it directly affect me? No. I would still keep my right to vote. But because I'm not black, does that not mean that I can fight for their right to vote? What would have happened throughout history had we not cared about other people's problems? That is what I think about. Again, there's this thing on the left, and it's very ironic. Progressives think about history as transgressive. If you talk to a progressive about history, about what's gone on in the slave trade, in so many different things, they'll talk about all the sins of our generations past. A conservative, ironically, looks at history as progressive. We look at what has happened, the great improvements we've made, the atrocities that happened, and how we sought to repent for them. What would have happened throughout history if we had always thought of ourselves as transgressive instead of progressive? If white men, for instance, hadn't fought the Civil War in the 1800s, black men would still be enslaved. That's just the reality. There were not enough black slaves that were rebelling against their slave masters to effectuate the Civil War. The vast majority of people who died in that war were white men fighting for many different reasons, not just for the emancipation of slaves, but that was one reason why. And no historian can dispute the idea that if white men were not involved in that, Abraham Lincoln being the chief one who literally signed the Emancipation Proclamation as a white man, if white men hadn't been involved in that, black men could still, men and women might still be enslaved today. If black men, for instance, hadn't fought in the Revolution, we may have not had American independence at that time. Many black men fought in the Revolution, some of them as slaves, some of them as free men. Those men, despite not even fighting so that they could have a vote at the time, still fought so that America could be free. If white men hadn't voted for women's suffrage, would they be able to vote today? No. It took a lot of white men to vote for women's suffrage in order for them to be put into office. I live in Utah. Utah was the second state ever to grant women's suffrage. I know a lot about the history of it. Tons of really famous and amazing women leaders who carried that. But let me say, tons of white men in Utah. Everyone knows. Tons of white men in Utah who made that happen. Did it have anything to do with them? No. But they saw a need in the world and they wanted to fix it. They took responsibility for their brother, or their sister in this case. They loved them and they did what was right. It didn't have anything to do with them specifically, but it doesn't matter. They took responsibility for it regardless. I mean, that is one of the first lessons we learn from the Bible, after all. Cain kills Abel, and God goes to him and says, "Where is your brother?" And he says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And that was one of the greatest first sins, was him not taking responsibility for his brother. Had he just said, "I'm taking responsibility for my brother," he wouldn't have killed him, and he wouldn't have been guilty of that sin. So we are our brother's keeper. It doesn't matter the skin color. I don't care if you're transgender, you're homosexual, you're non-bi. I don't care like what letter you identify as. We all have the responsibility to help each other out. Dividing ourselves by something that we did not choose does not make any sense. What does make sense and what does make you valuable are the things that you can control. How hard you work, how well you raise your family, how well you rise above your trials, how much you contribute to society and to your local community. Anyone can do this. It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're Hispanic. It does not matter your race, doesn't matter your gender. Anyone can do this, and this makes you someone of value. It makes your opinion valuable. The color of your skin does not make your opinion valuable. It doesn't matter. It should not have any binding. It should not have any reason to make your opinion more valid or less valid. I'm going to end on this. I just watched Remember the Titans. Great movie. It's crazy. It blew my mind as I was watching it how far we have fallen from that movie. I mean, that was a movie produced not that long ago by Disney. In the movie, the players, so it's two football teams that basically combine in the 70s. And one team is white, one's black. And they go through a little bit of a stretching period where they, don't like each other. But in the end, they end up winning the state championship in Virginia, and they come together. So it's a really beautiful story. But what matters most is not that half the team is black and half the team is white. What matters, and this is literally the whole point of the movie, what matters is that they work together and that they're football players. It's not that they're black football players or white football players. It's that they're really good. They're a great team. They make something great together. Others comment, like they'll hear from other teams during the movie, like, "Oh, like you're a mixed team." And they're like, "Yeah, so what?" Like, that's not what makes them amazing. What makes them amazing is that they work together and love each other. They're one team, and what you see at the end is that the color of their skin throughout the movie becomes less and less important until they win together. And that is the moral of the story. is that we win together when our purposes are aligned, when we love each other, and when the color of our skin becomes the least important thing about us.